Hello everybody, welcome to StraightA, Dawson here. Back with our NFL Week 11 power rankings here today. Of course, I'm still soloing it for now until maybe something further down the line I'll do a video with the guys again. But we're going to tackle these power rankings myself and kind of show you where I think the power of these teams really lie. Of course, right in front of you is already the whole power rankings. If you want to look and kind of already critique me, go down in the comments and cuss me out, praise me, I don't care. Whatever you want. I'm going to quickly go through. I'm going to keep this as short of a vid as I can, because I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about here except for maybe the bottom half and the top half, so maybe there's not much in between. But maybe there's more to talk about here than I think, but whatever. We'll jump right into it. But thank you guys for your support in all the videos so far. Leave a comment down below, leave a like, hit the bell notification icon, and also subscribe if you haven't already. So let's jump right into the power rankings to give you my explanations. First of all, I think it's finally time to put the Panthers at number 32. They have been losing after losing after losing, and I think the Bears and Cardinals are at least kind of stacking up better and being more consistent and getting some better play out there, at least now and then, while the Panthers are struggling. They got one win. They beat the Texans in a pretty close game where you could argue the Texans really just weren't off on their game that week. So the Panthers are easily the worst team in the NFL right now. So finally, the power rankings are at the last spot, 32. Meanwhile, the Cardinals and the Bears, I'm giving the Cardinals a little bit of credit now. Kyler's back. He looks good, looks hopeful. So we're going to see how that goes in the coming weeks. But I like where the Cardinals are kind of headed in long-term expert rankings, I guess. But I like the Cardinals at 31 right now. Meanwhile, the Bears have jumped up a little bit for me. I'm liking Baguette, Tyson Baguette. I know that's not how you say his name, but I'm saying how it is. A little bit more. And their defense is stepping up just a little bit, but it's still overall not a great overall team. Sorry if you can hear. They're doing some construction out back, so hopefully it's not picking up too much. But yeah, the Bears been stepping up a little bit, but not too much where I'm really praising them. So we'll give them 30 and be fine with it. And I'm finally succumbing to it. Of course, everybody knows the Giants, of course, have been dropping down the tier lists that I use pretty well. And it's finally time. I mean, they got destroyed by the Cowboys. Not only that, though, they just did not put up any stats. I'm usually somebody who's pretty easygoing, even if you get destroyed. As long as you put up stats or something. It's against a good team, granted, but around the teams all around them were all, doing good. There's a lot of teams that went down with them, like the Falcons and Patriots. Well, Patriots, I guess we're already further down. But beside the point, there's a lot of good teams in front of them, like the Texans, the Colts, the Broncos, the Raiders, who are improving, who actively are improving and beating good teams. The Giants have not done that. It's finally time. The rankings finally kind of collapsed in a way where the Giants fell to a tier when the Broncos, Raiders, Texans, and Colts have finally proven themselves out of it. So it was time. It was a perfect time to pull the trigger on a -5. The -5 isn't necessarily for the performance as much as it is for the conditions. I'd probably say more so their loss is more worth a -3, but the people around them forced it into a -2 extra. So -5 finally. I think the Giants are still slightly better than the Bears, but they're kind of getting on that level with the Cardinals and Panthers pretty soon if they don't start picking it up a little bit more. It's just that it was time. I have to succumb to it eventually, and I finally have done it. The Patriots, kind of the same case here. I mean, they're constantly losing. They look fine in a lot of cases, which they probably are the most gradually downturning, because they've been gradually going down for a while, but they haven't really made a big jump because they don't lose by a ton. They just lose by a decent enough margin where it's a -2 every now and then, and so it's finally caught up with them. Finally, the Falcons. Unfortunately, the Falcons actually succumbed to the Giants' hate here too, because their stats this week was not good at all. I don't think they broke 100 yards passing or something. Bijan was fine, I guess. The defense was a big step down. It just was another big condition thing where they jumped down a tier for me, and they are jumping into the same tier that the Broncos, Raiders, Colts, and Texans, and all of them were basically leaving at that point. So it was kind of conditions that couldn't help the Falcons here. Maybe their spot is a little aggressive for them. This one's maybe the most regrettable I have, just by glaring at it, but it kind of lines up because I do think the teams ahead of them have just been improving more and more, while the Falcons have been getting worse slowly. So unfortunately, this week just lined up for them to go -4, and I don't hate it. It's probably my least favorite move of the week, but it's not the most awful one. The Raiders, I gotta give them credit. They won, and Aiden O'Connell isn't awful. The defense has been stepping up just a tiny bit, and Josh Jacobs is fine. So good for them. At +2, I feel like that's fair. The Broncos +4. They were originally was between a +3, a +5, and because you know me, I'm a Broncos fan, so there's a little bit of bias here, I'm sure. But they beat the Chiefs, they beat the Bills, and Russell Wilson has constantly looked good. He hasn't put up bad stats. The defense on the secondary has definitely put up good stats. It's just more of that defensive line area, and they stepped up big in both the Chiefs and the Bills game. More so the Bills game than the Chiefs game. But they've been playing constantly good, and again, it lined up perfectly. Where again, I think their win was more a +2, maybe a +3, arguably. But I think conditions rose just in time for them to get maybe a +2 extra from the teams that were falling. So +4 seems aggressive, but also I do think they deserve the 25 spot. I don't. Titans are an arguable spot too. I think Titans, Broncos, and Raiders are all there right together. But you can kind of argue which ones has momentum. Obviously, Titans have momentum going down. Broncos, Raiders have momentum going up. I'm going to give Will Levis one more week type deal because the Buccaneers, while the loss was ugly, there's some good things you can take away from the Titans. So I'm going to give them one more week, and I decided, like, hey, this isn't too bad. We can kind of put them in that same category of a small gap for the Broncos and Raiders. And these teams can determine where their fate lies this next week. Then finally, I know Ben would probably praise me just a little bit because I think he wants them more in the top 20 than 23. But the Texans are finally at 23, moving up +4. Again, similar to the Broncos. I think their win was impressive with the Bengals, and I think probably theirs probably deserves the same treatment, +2 or +3-ish. And I think they were at a +5 before, but I decided to give the Colts a slight advantage over them because they also did a good win, and plus they beat the Texans. Plus they have very similar records. Plus I think the Colts have a better roster right now than the Texans. So I kind of decided the tiebreaker for me is pretty much neck and neck for them, but I decided maybe to give the Colts just a slight edge because I thought +5 for the Texans was a little aggressive, and that way it evens it out a little bit more between the Colts and Texans. Either way, again, conditions rose where, again, the Falcons and Giants were falling, Texans are rising. Simple to the point, and they are going good and fast. If they keep on winning, they're going to easily come up to the top 20 here pretty soon because C.J. Stroud has looked awesome these last couple weeks. Colts, again, same thing here. This last week wasn't the best, but they won, so take it or leave it. The stats aren't amazing. The run game is it's consistent, I guess, and the defense is fine. I think, again, conditions rose where maybe this is worth a +1, but, again, conditions got them to +2 extra. And so now we're out of that territory where the -5 and -4 really helped a lot of teams, where it kind of inflated some numbers here and there because I think the Giants and Falcons, again, just did so bad, while the Broncos, Raiders, Colts, and Texans did so good rising up. Plus, the Titans fell a little bit too, so it helps some of the numbers from the Colts and Texans as well. Meanwhile, I just kind of swapped places with Commanders and Saints. I mean, at this point, they're kind of just trading places. They kind of feel like similar teams. Saints feel more consistent, but I like the Commanders roster better. And so giving the Commanders top 20 spot feels a little bit more appropriate, especially after this last week when even though they lost by like 3 points. So either way, the Jets swapped the places with the Rams, basically. Jets fell down their tier finally. I'm kind of done with their offense. I put a lot of trust in their offense initially, but I think that's finally time to say, all right, I'm not too impressed. Well, the Rams, their offense has slowed down, but their defense has stepped up. So it's kind of evened out for them, where I'm still not on the edge of really saying they're going to be in the next tier just yet, but because they need some wins. They need some definite wins. They need some good showings, which I think they'll show this week, but I think the 18 spot for now is fair because I think they're an explosive roster who have the potential of falling probably below like 21, 22, 23 if they keep on losing again. But they have enough momentum right now, I think, where I feel good about the 18 spot for them, but that one's arguably a little bit lower. The Packers, this week they showed me a little bit of something, so I kind of just kept them where they are. They pretty much are in a kind of tier of their own at this point because I'm not too sure whether they are up here in the top 16 or if they're down here in the bottom 17 or bottom 16. So I kept them the same this week. Their loss against Steelers wasn't bad. It wasn't good either. So I just kind of said they didn't move down or up too much to make a significant difference. Same with the Buccaneers. They had a definitive win over the Titans, but it's the Titans for one. And the stats weren't very good either way. There's still a lot of room between them and the Steelers and them and the Packers. So I kind of just evened it out a little bit more. So feel pretty good there. Steelers, same case there. They won over the Steelers or over the Packers, but there wasn't a whole lot to show there. So keeping all three of those teams the same, I don't feel too bad about it. Now we're moving into this whole other new tier of the top 14, which I think are definitively good teams. Chargers are falling off that. And again, they suffer from the Giants effect where they fell 3 spots because the teams in front of them are rising. Chargers are not picking up wins where they should be, and it was a good game against the Lions. Lions are a top-tier team, and they had a really good game with them, and Justin Herbert put up a monster game. Defense did not show up. Brandon Staley continues his bad coaching ways. It affected them in a bad way. They got -3. Simple to the point. The other 3 teams in front of them were in that same tier of the Seahawks, Browns, and Vikings, who are kind of neck and neck with the Chargers. All improved. All did well and showed something outside of it. Chargers did too, but they also got brought down to earth more on the average level because of their defense and their coaching. So they lost. They had bad coaching. They had a bad defense, but they had a stellar offense. So it kind of evens out to a slightly above average game, I guess, but I think it's probably could be below average. Either way, very neck and neck with all of them. Chargers were leading this whole area, but I think they're lost. I'm trying to think who was on bye week here. I think there's one team on bye week, and I think that was the Seahawks, wasn't it? No, Seahawks beat the Commanders. Seahawks put a bunch of numbers up and beat the Commanders by 3 points, but they still put up a lot of stats. So moving up one feels good. The Browns, got to give them credit. They beat the best team, or one of the best teams in the league so far, in the Ravens, and division rival too. Their defense stepped up. Deshaun Watson showed out in the second half. So I got to give them a little bit of credit where credit's due. And I think it was the Vikings who are on bye. I forgot. I honestly don't have it in front of me either. No, I'm mistaken. That was for the next tier. None of these teams had byes. The Vikings actually had a game this week. So, and again, there was nothing really too much to talk about with the Vikings this week in terms of, like, Josh Dobbs came out, showed out, and they beat the Saints. I mean, like, that's just kind of simple to the point. They put up good numbers, enough to kind of make me feel comfortable dropping the Chargers below them, just because, again, the Vikings beat a decent team by 8 points, put up decent stats all around the board, move up. Browns beat a really good team, put up decent stats across the board, especially on defense, move up decent bits. Seahawks, a little bit of everything stellar and probably more of the offensive category, move up. Meanwhile, the Chargers lost, and again, I think they moved down than anything. The only thing you can maybe argue is them over the Vikings. I probably wouldn't put them above the Browns or Seahawks pretty comfortably, but I think the Vikings, Chargers are pretty close, and then I think the Seahawks, Browns are pretty close. But either way, I think all four of those teams are kind of on the same level. I still lean giving the Vikings the dub there because I'm going to reward Josh Dobbs and not punish him for doing well because they are doing really good things in Minnesota there. Meanwhile, I think the Chargers have been falling for a hot minute now. I think it's finally start timing to punish them because they are at a negative record now. So I can't say they're in that category anymore. And honestly, kind of close for me to be overtaken even by the Steelers, who have been looking really, really good. Meanwhile, let's get into the top 10 now. Jaguars are now at that firmly top 10 spot, and I'll be honest, I'm almost done with them. The only reason why I decided to keep them in the top 10 is because they got beat by the 49ers, and they still have a 6-3 record. And the defense did enough for me not to just hate them. And Trevor Lawrence did not. On offense, across the board, awful game for them. And it was against the 49ers, and it's kind of similar to the 49ers why I decided to boost them up more or give them more credit than they probably deserve because they beat a really good team in the Jags or decimated a good team in the Jags. You can debate putting the Jaguars outside the top 10. I will not fight you on that too much. I'm going to hesitate one more week just because I've seen the Jags do good. We've seen the Jags do bad now, of course, and we've seen them do bad in the past. But I still think they have a solid roster and have the capabilities of beating the teams in 11 through 14. I do think they're on that fringe top 10 spot. They're kind of on the hot seat for me in that category, but I'm going to give them one more week because it was against a stellar 49ers team who were ready to play, and it wasn't on the Jaguars defense as much as I think the stats show. It was mostly on the Jags offense, which kind of goes a little bit more down. Either way, they got punished quite a bit and almost are in their own category, but I decided just to keep them in that top 10 spot because it was such a good team in the 49ers. Then you got the Dolphins bye week. They move up one because of Jags. Now we're going to get to the top 8 where the Bills, big punish week. There's not much to say here. All three of the teams ahead of, or two of the teams ahead of them won. So 49ers and the Lions, I mean, in terms of the teams that overtook them, they won, so they move up pretty much. The Bengals, they got beat by the Texans, who I think it was more of the Texans playing good than it was the Bengals playing bad, in my opinion. So I didn't punish the Bills or Bengals that much. I did initially kind of have the Bills above the Bengals, but I was like, well, the Bengals and Bills played. The Bengals won pretty handily, and I think the Bills losing to the Broncos is more embarrassing than the Bengals losing to the Texans, even though I think the power rankings showed that the Broncos were lower. So, because I think the Bengals played better with better stats, while Josh Allen and the Bills' defense and all that played a little bit worse. So I kind of give the tiebreaker there to the Bengals hesitantly, but you can kind of swap these teams. But I still think the Bengals have a better roster and have been rising up better than the Bills have while they're going down. So, plus the technically the record's better, 5-4 for the Bengals, 5-5 for the Bills. So very similar there. You can almost argue the Bills maybe don't deserve a -3 drop, maybe just a -2 right ahead of the Bengals. Again, I kind of just called it even and said go ahead. Lions, they've been doing really amazing for a while now. They have a 7-2 record. It's starting to time to treat them seriously. They had a close game against Chargers, who are a good team, but their stats really show really well. Their defense didn't show up as well as I hoped, but again, all three of the teams below them, so the Dolphins, Bills, and Bengals, either had a bye week in the Dolphins, or did bad like the Bills, or just didn't win over the Bengals. So the Lions kind of had a perfect opportunity to finally jump up to that fringe top 5 spot, which brings us to the number 5 spot of the 49ers, who are doing really good stuff now. They showed out really well in the Jaguars game, and I almost kept them. So I would have kept them in 5 either way. But there's a tier list where I think the top 5 have their own tier now, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I believe, have their own tier. And I decided to put the 49ers back in that top tier. More so because I think them beating a good team in the Jags the way they did is a big showcase in showcasing that. If it was almost any other team outside the top 10, I probably would not do it. If it was the Seahawks or below, I probably would not put them in that tier ready for them to jump up against the Ravens, the Cowboys, stuff like that. But they have similar records to all those teams ahead of them, outside the Eagles, who have a 2-win streak over everybody but the Chiefs, I believe, and the Lions, I guess. But I think the 49ers deserve that spot. They were king of the NFL for the first 6 weeks or so, 100%. Then they lost, which brought them back down to earth a little bit more. They lost again, which put them more in that fringe top 3 area. And then they lost again, which put them in that top 6, 7 range. Now they're back. Put them back in that range. Put them back in that race. I feel good about it. Ravens, not going to punish them too much. Divisional matchup. But, I mean, when you get to that top of the game, when the Chiefs are on bye week, so you drop them right below them. Cowboys win by dominating fashion. They're going to drop a little bit. So, not too badly. -2 is not too much. I still feel confident in the Ravens. It was a good game. So, -2 is really just because the Chiefs and Cowboys are so close to them that it just ended up happening. Meanwhile, the Cowboys destroyed the Giants. Not too much to say, but again, I felt like it was worth rewarding them because, I mean, destroying teams is still pretty valuable. Meanwhile, the Chiefs bye week, but the Ravens dropped, so boom. Eagles still continue to win, and as long as they're looking consistent and I don't see anything flawed on their team, I'm not going to consider dropping them down. Again, until I see weakness from them, which, again, the Commanders' games have shown weakness in them, but they still are consistent stat-wise with everything, so I'm not going to punish them overly for anything that was shown there. And that's the power rankings. I kept this pretty short this time. Yeah, look at that. I got 18 minutes on the clock, and I got a couple 30 seconds or so to edit out, so that'll be awesome. Thank you guys for watching. Please tell me what you agree with and disagree with the power rankings. I'm still getting better and better about how I'm going to kind of adjust this. The bottom half, I feel like, is finally getting back in the zone. Kind of to recap some things I maybe could be debatable. I think some good topics. I want to hear from y'all. Are the Titans deserve more in that bottom 8, or do you think they're better than they show with Will Levis at the helm? Do you think the Rams? Do you think the Rams are still a top 20 team, even though the record doesn't show it? They sometimes have sparks of hope for me, but there's teams that are more consistent in some ways in terms of their record, and like the Commanders and the Saints. Maybe even the Texans and the Colts, you can argue there. So do the Rams really deserve that top 20 spot, or do you think they're more so in the 24, 23 range? Then you got the Jags. Do you think they're finally outside the top 10? Do you feel like the Seahawks and Browns have proven enough, and Jaguars have proven enough against them to kind of move out and have them overtake them? And do you think the Bengals are still a better team than the Bills? Even though I think the Bengals had a slow start, I think the momentum was on their side for a long time, so the momentum is on the Bengals side. Do you still think that maybe the Bengals still deserve that edge? And I think it's debatable in terms of the power rankings, just in terms of like how consistent things have been, but now the Bills are kind of on that decline. So what's kind of the answer to that? And the 49ers, do you think that they are a top 5 team still, or the weakness from the 3-loss streak of decent, mediocre, above average teams deserves them kind of more in the 6, 7, 8 category even? And beside the point, do you think the Ravens are going to actually end up being a really good team? With the one loss here, it shows a little bit of weakness in them. And do you think the Eagles are going to maintain that number 1 spot up until the playoffs? Those are some good questions for you to answer down below, and please let me know, because I love this. I love making power rankings. It kind of makes me think and really think critical about these teams. Look at some things on the repackaged videos and stuff like that. So really exciting, and this little quick video for y'all to here today. Predictions will be out tomorrow, hopefully early. I'm going to try to edit them and get them done, but I got some studying to do for the GMAT. So really awesome stuff going on. Thank you guys for watching. StraightA Dawson out. Take care, guys.